அண்ணா உங்க மைக் ஆன் பண்ணுங்கண்ணா. சொல்லுண்ணா.
Hello. ஹலோ
அண்ணா கேக்குதாண்ணா?
கேட்குதுங்கண்ணே.
அவங்க கவிதா மேடம் அவங்க அன்மியூட் பண்ணா அவங்கள பேசலாம்.
மேடம் கவிதா மேடம், Kavita madam, you can unmute and start. Hello.
Hello.
Madam, good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You can start the meeting.
Okay. Good morning, all. This is Dr. Kavita, Head of the Department of Commerce, Government Arts and Science College, Mullipur. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all participants to this webinar on the most apt topic in the current scenario, that is financial services after lockdown. Without going much into the topic, I take the privilege to introduce the resource person of the day, Dr. D. Kumaresan, Principal, Lakshmi Narayana College of Arts and Science, Dharmapuri. He is a vibrant academician known to most of you here. I am sure the session of his presentation will give you new insights and also familiarize the topic with you. I welcome you, sir, for the session.
Thank you, madam.
And also, I would like to thank you for accepting our invitation and not only accepting and guiding us to make it possible on this day. And now, without wasting much time, I hand over the session to you, sir. Please.
Thank you, madam.
அண்ணா ஒரு நிமிஷம். யூடியூப் லைவ் சொல்லிருங்க. லைவ் லிங்க் வந்து சாட் பாக்ஸ்ல இருக்குது, அதை கிளிக் பண்ணா லைவ் பார்த்துக்கலாம்.
லைவ்ல கூட இதில் கொடுத்தாச்சா சாட் பாக்ஸில்?
போட்டேண்ணா.
Okay, thank you. Respected Madam Head of the Department, Dr. G. Kavita, and all the participants, all of you, a very pleasant morning. At the very outset, I would like to thank the Head of the Department and the faculty members of the Department of Commerce for having given me the wonderful opportunity to share my views on financial services after lockdown. So it is immense pleasure to share my views here. Since the number of participants is limited to 100, we have made an arrangement to watch the session through YouTube lively. In the chat box, the link is given. Those who are not able to join here may use the YouTube link and watch the program lively. Thank you. So today, the topic is financial services after lockdown. So what is meant by financial services and how the financial services are going to be operated in the lockdown period, that is after lifting the lockdown period, and how the people will be benefited by using the financial services. What are the strategies to be adopted by the NBFCs, non-banking financial companies, to render their financial services successfully? This is what we are going to discuss today. See, the role of financial service is very important in enhancing the liquidity. The major problem during the lockdown period, both for individuals as well as for the business people, is liquidity. We have been suffering from liquidity. So what kind of measures can be taken to boost our liquidity, to improve our liquidity, is the million-dollar question before all of us. So in today's session, we are going to discuss about the different types of financial services and what are the benefits or disadvantages of the financial services, and after lockdown how the financial services are going to be. So this is the theme of the session. Let me share. Is it visible for you?
Yes, sir.
PPT?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Right. So financial services after lockdown. First of all, since many students are also here, let me start with the meaning of financial services. The financial services are very helpful, as I told you, for improving the liquidity, and mostly these are the activities which are in financial nature, and that could be brought under the term financial services. The term financial services in a broad sense means mobilizing and allocating savings. The major attitude of Indian public is the saving. In the last decade, we have witnessed a global economic crisis. During that period, many developed countries were affected because of the global economic crisis. But the only country which survived without much suffering from the global economic crisis was certainly India, because of the savings habit of the Indian public. So here, the role of Indian financial services is to transform the savings into investments, because the savings of the public will be helpful if it is transformed to investment. It will be very helpful for the business people. So the role of financial services is to transform or to mobilize the savings and allocate the savings into investments. For that purpose only, the financial services have been introduced. So it includes all activities involved in the transformation of savings into investment. So what are the types of financial services? We have plenty of services. These services can be basically classified into fund-based services as well as fees-based services. Among the fund-based services, we have leasing, hire purchase, factoring, mutual funds, bills discounting, credit financing, and house financing. In the fee-based services, we have issue management, portfolio management, corporate counseling, merchant banking, credit rating, stock broking, debt and capital restructuring. So these are the various financial services that can be classified as fee-based financial services. Now we are going to focus on the fund-based financial services in this session. So leasing, hire purchase, factoring, mutual funds, bill discounting, credit financing, and housing finance. Why we are focusing on these fund-based services only means these are the services which are helping the individuals as well as the business people. Regarding the fee-based services, they are major services which are going to help the business people only. So we are concentrating on the services which are helpful for the individuals as well as for the business houses. So what is leasing? Leasing. So what is lease? It is an agreement whereby leaser is the person who transfers the assets to another person. He is called a leasee. So the leaser and leasee enters into an agreement. That agreement provides for transfer of asset from one person to another person in return for a rent. The matter considered or the transferred to the leasee is right to use an asset for an agreed period of time. So here the asset is transferred to leasee. The leasee can use the asset only the possession is transferred and not the right or title to the asset is transferred. So here leasing means a financing arrangement that provides a firm with an advantage of using an asset without owning it, may be termed as leasing. So here an agreement is made between two parties. One party he is called leaser and another party is called leasee. The leaser has the asset. He wants to transfer the asset to the leasee for a rent or hire. It is called leasing agreement. So under leasing agreement, what are the types of leasing agreement? There are two types, basically operating leases as well as the financial leases. So operating leases are used for short-lived assets. So the assets can be classified into short-lived assets as well as the long-lived assets. The example of short-lived assets are computers, certain instruments, automobiles, etc. Regarding the long-lived assets, capital assets like land and buildings, large pieces of equipments and all. So here, if an agreement is entered into between leaser and leasee for transfer of short-lived assets like computers, certain instruments, as well as the automobiles, it can be categorized as operating lease. Normally, the operating lease can be cancelled after certain period of time. So it is in existence only for a short period. After that period, the operating lease can be terminated or cancelled. So this is the operating lease. Here, the operating lease may be extended by the leaser after the initial leasing agreement. As I told you, since it is for a short period only, after that period, if there is any mutual consent, then the leaser may permit the leasee to extend the initial leasing agreement. Here, the leaser's original cost generally exceeds the total value of original leasee's payments. So, leasee is going to pay rent to the leaser. So, what is the total rent paid by the leasee will always be less than the original cost of the asset invested by the leaser. So this is what about the operating lease. Regarding the financial lease, here the financial lease is used for long-lived assets such as land, buildings, and large pieces of equipment. So it cannot be cancelled. So obligate the leasee to make payments over a defined period of time. Say for example, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, up to 99 years, the lease can be extended. So during that much of long period, the lease cannot be terminated. Once the lease is taken, once the lease agreement, that is financial lease, has been taken and agreed into by the leaser and leasee, it cannot be terminated in between the lease period. So over the period of lease, the leasee is supposed to pay the lease payment every year without fail. So the total payments here will be greater than the leaser's cost. So In the previous one, leaser's cost will be higher, total lease payment will be lesser. But here, total payments made by the leasee will be greater than the leaser's cost. So this is a major difference between leaser's, operating lease as well as the financial lease. So here, there are two types of leases we have seen. So what is the next financial service which is made available for the individuals as well as the business people? Hire purchase. See here, a hire purchase is a method of buying goods through making installment payments over time. Here, the buyer need not pay the entire price of the asset in lump sum payment. Rather, it can be paid in installments over a period of agreed period. So, hire purchase is a method of buying goods through making installment payments over time. See here, the ownership of goods purchased through hire purchase is not officially transferred to the buyer. In the previous case also, that is in leasing agreement also, the ownership of asset is not transferred. But here, during the period of hire purchase, the ownership of asset is not transferred, but ownership is transferred at the end of the hire purchase period after making all the hire purchase installments. The ownership is transferred to the buyer. So the ownership of the asset is not transferred to the buyer officially until all the required payments have been made by the buyer. So here, companies offering hire purchase options earn a profit by applying additional costs to the monthly payment, which serves as interest charges for the purchase. So here, normally, hire purchase price will be higher than the cash price. So if you buy a product by making full payment as cash, the price will be lesser. But in case of hire purchase, the hire purchase will be higher. So the difference will be the interest charged by the hire vendor. That will be the profit for the hire vendor. So what is the difference between leasing and the hire purchase? We have to understand. So basic two differences are there. One is, as I told you, ownership. In the case of lease agreement, ownership lies with the leaser himself. The leasing has the right to use the equipment. So the possession only is transferred. And also the leaser has no option to purchase the asset. So this is the basic characteristic of lease agreement. As far as the hire purchase agreement is concerned, in the case of hire purchase, the hirer or the buyer has the option to purchase. The hirer becomes the owner of asset or equipment immediately after making the payment of last installment. So in the case of leasing, there is no chance, there is no possibility for the leasee to purchase the asset. Only he can use the asset till the payment of lease during the lease period. But here in the case of hire purchase, the hirer has an option to purchase the asset and he has to purchase the asset immediately after the last payment of installment. Then what is the other basic difference? Method of financing. In the case of leasing, the method of financing is for business assets only. But here, in the case of hire purchase, the financing is available both for business assets as well as the consumer articles. So these are the basic differences. So one is ownership and the other is method of financing. So the next one, factoring. So the next financial service which is very helpful, particularly for the business people, is called factoring. It is a fund-based financial service that provides resources to finance receivables as well as facilitates the collection of receivables. It is another method of raising short-term finance through account receivable credit offered by commercial banks as well as the factors. So here, the factoring agreement, the factoring arrangement is made between a business unit and a factor. The third party, that party is called factor. Here, what agreement is entered into between these two are the business unit would have sold the goods on credit. So there could be some accounts receivable, bills receivable, or book debts. The business unit has to realize the book debts. So it may be difficult for the business unit to recover dues from the debtors. If the unit wants to concentrate more on production and marketing, definitely the team should be given certain relaxation so that they can concentrate on the production as well as the marketing. If the debt collection is also made simultaneously by the business people, so their attention is diverted, so the responsibility of collecting the dues from the debtors is being sold to a third party. That party is called factor. So the factor undertakes the responsibility of collecting the dues for certain charges to be made by the factor. So this is the factoring agreement. So it is another method of raising short-term finance through account receivable credit offered only by banks and factors. So here, a factor is a financial institution which offers services relating to management and financing of debts arising out of credit sales. Then, what are the types of factoring? Basically, the types of factoring can be classified into two. One is recourse factoring and another is non-recourse factoring. So what is the recourse factoring? You know, I told you basically factoring is an agreement for collection of dues from the debtors, from the sundry debtors, accounts receivable, bills receivable, or book debts are realized by the factor. In case if there is a bad debt or there is a debt which cannot be recovered from the debtors, what is a condition of the factor? So this is the basic criteria to distinguish between recourse factoring and non-recourse factoring. So in the case of recourse factoring, the client is required to buy back the unpaid bills receivable from the factor. Who is the client here? The business unit which has sold the bills receivables or accounts receivables to the factor. He is called the client. So in the event of certain bills that cannot be recovered by the factor, then it is the responsibility of the client to buy back the irrecoverable bills receivable from the factor in the case of recourse factoring. Whereas in the case of non-recourse factoring, here the factor has to bear the obligation of absorbing those bills receivable which cannot be recovered or which remain unpaid. So this is a basic difference. And another difference is, in the case of recourse factoring, the credit risk stays with the client in case of non-payment. But as far as the non-recourse factoring is concerned, the business unit remains unaffected. So these are the basic differences between factoring and recourse factoring and non-recourse factoring. So far we have seen three types of financial services. One is leasing, second one is hire purchasing, third one is factoring. So in the case of leasing, assets have been let out for a lease. So there are two parties, one is leaser and the other is leasee. The agreement between leaser and leasee is to let the asset used by the leasee for a payment during a period of lease. So that is called lease. In the case of hire purchase, the hire vendor sold the asset to the hire buyer under the agreement that the payment or the price of the asset is paid in installments. So that is called hire purchase. But in the case of factoring, here no assets, no fixed assets are there. The book debts are sold to a party, that is called factor. The factor takes the responsibility to collect the book debts from the parties, from the customers, so that this agreement is made between the factor and the business unit. So the next one is, of course, the most important one, mutual fund. This is what we are going to discuss very briefly in this session. So mutual fund. Here, mutual funds are a type of investment that takes money from many investors and uses it to make investments based on stated investment objective. So here, the investments made by the investors, individual investors or retail investors. These retail investors are in fact not affordable to make huge investment in the shares and securities of companies. So they have only very little amount of investment. With this very little amount of investment, what can they do? They can make investment in the shares and securities by pooling their amount, pooling their little amount. So here, one party takes the responsibility to collect little amounts from the retail investors, and these amounts are pooled together and the total amount is invested in shares and securities of companies. So the investment objective is clearly stated by the mutual fund companies or asset management companies. So here, each and every shareholder in the mutual fund participates proportionately in the gain or loss of the fund. So this is the type of mutual fund. So what are the types of mutual funds? One is equity mutual fund. The second one is debt funds. Third one is hybrid fund. Fourth one is international mutual funds. Fifth one, specialty mutual fund. Then next one, ETFs, that is exchange traded funds. And last, the funds of funds. So these are the various types of funds. So here, what are the advantages of mutual funds? We have plenty of advantages. Number one, liquidity. So the major booster of liquidity, both for the retail investors as well as for the business units, the liquidity can be improved by using the mutual funds. Similarly, diversification, risk diversification. See here, the small savings made by the investors have been transferred into investments and collected by the mutual fund manager. The mutual fund manager in turn invests the amounts into different portfolio of shares and securities. So whenever the portfolio of investment comes, the risk is diversified because the whole amount is not invested in a particular security or share, rather they are invested into in different securities and shares, so that the risk is diversified. So here risk diversification is possible. Then expert management, that a fund manager is required to possess expertise, so that only the fund can be invested intelligently in different securities by constructing the best portfolio. So here expert management is available. Then less cost of bulk transactions. If you go for bulk transactions, the individual investors have to pay more as cost of large transactions. But here, since the investment is made by the fund manager, the cost for bulk transaction is very less. Similarly, it is cost efficient, and the payments are made automatically. Then, what are the suitable financial goals? See here, the mutual funds are very suitable for your, that is the individual investors' financial goals. Then quick and painless processes. See here, the process is very quick. At the same time, it is painless because it gives an assured amount of return. A guaranteed amount of return is given to the investors. So the pain is less for the investors in mutual funds. Then tax efficiency, investment in smaller denominations, safety, systematic or one-time investment. These are all the advantages of mutual funds. Then, so far we have discussed about the 4 major fund-based financial services. So these are the definitions of 4 major financial services, advantages and disadvantages, difference between one financial service and another financial service, what is the role of one particular financial service, that and all we have discussed. Next, the major question or $1 million question before all of us is, after lockdown, after lifting the lockdown, what could be the position of financial services? Whether these financial services will be affected, number 1. Number 2, if these financial services are affected, what are the challenges? Number 2. Number 3, if certain challenges are faced by the service providers of financial services, how to recover the financial services? Number 3. And number 4, what are the benefits for the investors? So what are the benefits available from the financial services after lockdown, or in what way the financial services will be helpful for the individuals as well as the business units? So these are the major questions about the financial services after lockdown. Let us see one by one. First one we discussed is leasing. What is the leasing agreement? Under the leasing agreement, an asset is let out to the leasee. So here, the leasee is not required to invest more funds for the purchase of fixed assets, because after the lockdown, the liquidity is affected. The business units are suffering from lack of funds. So in this situation, buying an asset for a huge cost will be difficult. So it will further affect the business units, so that instead of buying an asset, it can be leased out. So there are opportunities. There are opportunities for the business people to get the assets under leasing agreement rather than buying an asset, because if you buy an asset, you have to invest a huge amount of money on the buying of asset. Since we have been suffering from lack of cash, lack of money, so lack of liquidity, why should we invest a huge amount of money on purchase of asset? So consider, there are opportunities. There is a facility or possibility of availing the asset under lease agreement. We have to make lease payments only over a period of time, for a long time, that is for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, we are going to use the asset only. So the title of the asset is not transferred to the leasee. The leaser is entitled to receive the lease payment made by the leasee. So the leasee is required to pay the lease amount only, and that too, even if it is for a payment towards the leasing of land and building. In the case of purchase of land and building or purchase of land, the leasee or the buyer has no option to avail tax benefits. But here, the lease payment made by the leasee is chargeable as an expenditure so that he can avail tax benefit. So he has to think prudently and wisely so that no huge amount is needed to be invested on the fixed assets. Since there is a possibility to avail the assets under leasing agreement, they can use the assets under leasing agreement so that only the minimum amount of lease payment can be made and the huge invested asset can be used by the leasee with very little payment, and also the tax benefit is available. So these are the major benefits. So if such kind of benefits are available, certainly it is an opportunity that would be availed by the business people. So if they are ready to avail the assets under the leasing, after lockdown, the leasers have more business opportunities. So after lockdown, both the leasers and the leases are going to be benefited if you plan properly. Number one. Number two, hire purchase after lockdown. See, here also, the buyer or hirer makes higher payment only, higher charges only. So every year, he is making the higher payment only, not the cash price of the asset is made by the hirer. The hirer makes the higher charges only. So here also the higher charges is eligible to or chargeable to the profit and loss account, so that it is a chargeable expenditure. He is eligible to make the little payments and use the assets. Here one more advantage is there for the hirer than the leasee, because here the hirer has an option to purchase the asset after having paid the last installment. The hirer can get the asset in his name. So the title of asset is officially transferred to the hirer after having made the last payment. In the case of leasing, after the lease period is over, the leasee has to return the asset back to the leaser. If the lease agreement is not renewed, under mutual consent. If the leaser prefers, it can be renewed and the asset can be retained by the leasee. It can be used for another lease period and lease payment can be made by the leasee. But here, in the hire purchase, the hirer has an opportunity or right to retain the asset if he has made all the hire installments. If all the installments have been paid by the hirer, the asset can be retained. The title of asset or the right to the asset is going to be transferred to the hirer. So this is another benefit for the or additional benefit for the hirer than the leasee. So here also there is no necessity for the hirer to investment a huge amount on land, building, equipments or certain consumable assets. So for all these assets, making investment by means of money, by means of cash is avoided. So that here also liquidity is enhanced. So this is what the situation of hire purchase after lockdown. See, simply many people would say lockdown has affected so and so, lockdown has affected so and so business, everything is affected, everybody is affected. No, certain opportunities are there. Why don't you look at the other side? If you look at the other side, you can find a bright future in many fields. So that is our responsibility to find out the field which has great prosperity. So here, regarding the financial services, I told you leasing has a bright opportunity. Hire purchase has greater prosperity. And the third one, what we have discussed the third one, that is factoring. Here, factoring is also going to be used by many people because after lockdown, we need liquidity. The basic problem, the basic issue is liquidity. So we have to increase our liquidity. That means we have to collect funds from the customers. We have to collect the dues from the customers. How is it possible? As I told you, if we focus our entire energy on collection of dues, we are not able to concentrate on production and other essential activities of business. So here it is possible to sell our book debts to another party called a factor. So if the factor takes the responsibility to collect the dues from the debtors, we will be free, we will be relaxed. So we will focus on production, marketing and other activities. So we will be free from stress of collecting the dues. So here the major problem is collecting the dues, particularly after lockdown. Many people don't have the liquidity. They may not have liquid cash. So making payments is difficult for every business unit. That is what we have been discussing. So under this situation, if a third party is ready to collect the dues from the debtors, definitely we will be stress-free. So here the opportunity for factors is increased. So this is the third one. So what is the last one? Mutual funds. So the opportunities available for the mutual funds after lockdown is going to be discussed in detail. So here the next one is how the opportunities for the financial services can be increased. Number one, we have to design a strong risk management. So the risk management is to be designed strongly. What are the risk factors associated? Credit risk. What are the systematic risks? What are the unsystematic risks? We have to find out what systematic risks we are going to face. What are the unsystematic risks we are going to face? So how to face the risks? So that is called risk management. So here, after lockdown, if we design risk management properly, our opportunities will be increased, enhanced. And number two, as I told you, robust collection. The collection should be made properly. So the debt collection mechanism should be made efficient and effective so that the robust collection is possible. And if the robust collection is possible, as I told you, the opportunities for financial services will be increased, will be improved. Then effective cost control. Of course, in order to improve the liquidity, the cost control measures should be made effective. We have to plan what is the cost which are going to incur in the long term, in the short term, as well as in the medium term. As I told you, in the long term, suppose if you want to buy an asset, buy a capital asset, which involves a huge amount, here the cost control measure, cost management measure is, as I told you, instead of buying an asset, by making a lump sum payment, either it can be bought through lease or through a hire purchase agreement so that the cost can be controlled. Similarly, the short-term costs or recurring costs are to be controlled in an effective manner. Then the next one is improved use of technology. See, nowadays, you know pretty well, the technology is widely used, even in the rural areas, even by illiterates, even those are not able to access to the technology are now aware of the technology, are now become, they have now become literate to the technology. So basic literacy is there among all the people, irrespective of the area of residence, irrespective of the educational background, irrespective of the business or occupational status. Now the use of technology has increased all over the world. So the business units also have to use the technology in an increased manner so that opportunities are more for the financial services sector. Then, with the cloud technologies, financial institutions can accelerate their digital transformation. So, cloud technologies are available. In the earlier period, the personal computers were used. So, here, cloud technologies are available. So, with the availability of cloud technologies, see now Google Drive is there. We can save more data in Google Drive rather than saving the data in our own computer, in our own personal computer or laptop, so that the storage is increased. More data can be stored in Google Drive and other such cloud storage facilities, so that here in laptop more storage is available for you, so that the digital transformation can be accelerated. So these are the ways in which the opportunities for financial sector, financial services sector can be improved. So here, what is the situation of mutual funds after lockdown? The impact of coronavirus pandemic on the economy is the major concern for investors. Why? Because of the extended lockdown. And of course, it cannot be denied that for the next few quarters, it will be very difficult to mobilize funds. So, what to do in this situation? It is agreed by many economists, by many analysts, that there will be a difficult situation to mobilize financial sources in the next few quarters, at least for the next few quarters. It will be difficult for mobilize funds. So, what to do? Certainly, we should or we must build a consistency fund. Not all the funds generated are not to be used. We mobilize funds with difficulty. With such difficulty, the entire funds earned or generated or mobilized should not be used in the ways which we require. Maybe sometimes these funds would be used in unnecessary activities. So the unnecessary activities, utilization of funds should be controlled, and we have to create a contingency fund. So a certain part of the funds mobilized should be parked in funds which has a liquidity, which has a higher liquidity. So we have to park funds in a liquid fund. And at the same time, we can invest such amount in term insurance also, so that in the short future or in the near future, the liquidity can be used. So whenever we need funds, we can mobilize the funds with the help of liquid fund as well as the term insurance. So here, individual investors are going to be benefited with the mutual funds as well as the hire purchase. The other investors are going to be benefited after lockdown by leasing, hire purchase, and factoring. What is the current scenario? So investing in capital markets has become a challenge for most investors in the wake of novel coronavirus outbreak. The recent closure of 6 debt mutual funds by the global giant Franklin Templeton. So the Franklin Templeton is the global giant in the mutual fund market. Recently, what this giant has made, he has the company has closed down 6 major popular debt mutual funds recently. So what is the impact of such a closure or withdrawal of such mutual funds? It has worsened India's credit situation, with liquidity becoming the major issue in the case of non-banking financial companies who offer many mutual fund schemes. So what is the attitude of investors? The investors are panicked. The panicked investors, how to behave? They believe that they have to pull out their investments from mutual funds because of that widespread negativity in markets around the global, including India. So the investors are panicked. So what is going to happen? 6 major funds have been pulled back or closed by the Templeton Franklin, the global giant in mutual fund industry. That industry has withdrawn 6 major funds. So certainly it is going to affect the whole mutual fund industry all over the world. So the investors are now panicked. They believe, they think that they have to pull out their investments from the mutual funds because they believe that their investment will be affected because of widespread negativity all over the world. So they want to draw back the amount. So widespread fear in the market is there, which also includes aversion from investing, not only pulling back the investments, but the further investments in mutual funds or other capital assets has also not made by the investors. So, which has left the mutual fund segment in a deep shock. So, this is the investors' attitude. So, after that, what are the opinions given by the experts? See the condition, the scenario we have seen, current scenario, mutual fund industry is affected mainly because of the closure of 6 major debt funds by the global giant, the Templeton Franklin. So if the major giant has withdrawn the funds, certainly all the investors are panicked. So the attitude of the panicked investors is to withdraw the amount or to pull out the investments from the mutual funds. So here, what do the experts opine on the current situation? Here, the experts, the financial analysts or the economists all over the world say that the 6 Franklin Templeton investment schemes have been closed down, but higher risk funds and other mutual funds do not face redemption risks. Understand? The other mutual fund schemes do not face redemption risks. This is number 1. Then the AMFI, that is Association of Mutual Funds of India, they have assured the investors that it was a one-off incident. So it is not a regular or recurring incidents. It is one-off incident, and that it will have no contagion effect on other credit risk funds. So there is no need for panic. It is an assurance given by AMFI, the Association of Mutual Funds of India, has given assurance to the investors that you need not bother about the impact of the withdrawal of Franklin Templeton mutual fund schemes. You don't bother. It is a one-time incident. It happened once. The impact will be for only a short duration. So don't bother about the mutual funds. So this is the expert opinion. And moreover, the recent closure of 6 capital debt funds has negatively impacted the sentiments of mutual fund investors, as we have discussed. Panicked investors are now looking to pull out their money in existing mutual funds. But experts say a decision made in panic may not be accurate. Always, not only in the case of investment, even in our real life, if we are in a sad condition, if we are in a panic situation, if we are in a worry, then we should not make any decision. Here also, the experts say that any decision made during the panic condition may not be accurate. And it is better for the investors to strategize at this moment. So we have to formulate, design certain strategies for the future. So the best way to get benefits from the mutual funds is not to pull back. Rather, you have to stay back for a long time. So what are the strategies to retain the investors? Part of the strategy is to equate credit risk and investing in safer mutual fund schemes. So here we have to design the strategy that involves equating credit risk. So the credit risk is diversified, equated, so that the investment should be made in safer mutual fund schemes. One. Number two, mutual fund houses in India have jumped into reassure investors. So the major mutual fund houses in India, they are giving reassurance to the investors, which include corporates as well as the individuals. So the entire debt fund market is not at risk, and the mutual fund houses urge the investors to stay patient and invested. So this is the strategy to be adopted that will be helpful for the mutual fund companies as well as the investors. So we have to stay back, stay back, stay back. So during the lockdown period, we stayed at home safely. Here we have to stay safely with the risk, low risk and safer investments for a long term. Okay, then what are the suggestions for investors? M3 also told the investors that debt schemes of most mutual funds have superior credit quality, number one. And number two, they are fairly liquidated. So fairly liquidated and superior credit quality is there. If both of these features are available in a mutual fund, that is the best source for making our investments without any risk. So it is called as an isolated event. The experts have also assured that there is sufficient liquidity in the system. So the investors need not worry. You need not panic. However, they have asked the investors to take a different approach to deal with the challenges in a virus-affected market. So how we have to devise? Here, the RBI has taken certain initiatives to enhance the fund flow towards the banks and non-banking financial companies, so as they can mobilize or they can lend the money to the customers. So what are the initiatives taken by the RBI? Number one, RBI has stepped in to support stressed mutual funds with a special liquidity window of rupees 50,000 crore, reassuring investors that it is actively monitoring the situation, that there is no reason to worry. So the investors, please keep in mind that there is no need to worry. The apex body, RBI, is constantly monitoring the performance of mutual funds. The RBI has stepped in to support stressed mutual funds with a special package liquidity window of rupees 50,000 crore to reassure the investor, and it is actively monitored. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. At the same time, what about the fresh investors? While the fresh investors should maintain caution, so they should be precautious. Before making the investment, they should be very cautious in selection of a particular scheme of investment that will be safer or secured. So here while investing in any new scheme, those already invested need to equate their portfolios and make informed choices. So the informed choices play a vital role. As I told you, the experts have opined that you have to select the safer funds, which has more liquidity. So you can make your investments as deposits in banks, which has greater liquidity. Similarly, in term insurance, you can make your investment in term insurance. At the same time, in mutual funds also, if the fund has more credit equity, so that you can make your investment in mutual funds. Investors who have balanced and risk-free portfolio, they should not engage in panic. They need not sell out their investments due to increased negative in the debt market. You need not worry. One expert, the CEO of paisabasar.com, he said, Sakil Arora, he says, investors must continue with their SIPs, that is small investment plans, short investment plans. So in the SIPs, you have to continue, number one. Then a bearish market like this, in fact, is a great opportunity to invest, as you can buy more units at lower NAVs. So because of the impact of COVID-19, because of the impact of lockdown, the NAV of assets of asset management companies or the mutual funds have gone down. So if you buy now, you can buy the units of mutual funds, you can buy at lower rates, lower NAVs, so that it will be beneficial for you in future. So you can stay back. You can make investments at the lower rates in the SIPs. So along with SIPs, investors who can also invest lump sum money in equity mutual funds in a staggered manner. So you have to spread your investments so that the risk is diversified. This will help you to create a bigger corpus and reach your financial goals quicker. Keep investing through your SIPs, and if possible, invest a lump sum as well as in equity mutual funds in a staggered manner. But do remember, investments in mutual funds should be made with a long-term investment horizon of 5 years or more. It should not be made in a short period. Say, for example, 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, like that. At least 5 years you have to make your investments. So that in the long run, you'll be reaping more benefits. So if you are investing, consider multi-cap funds. In this scenario, over others, though if you have a low risk appetite, you may choose large cap funds and you'll be benefited in the long term. A certain portion can also be invested in index funds, says Arora. So the Arora says you can have certain portion of your investments in index funds. So in SIPs, in equity mutual funds, also in index funds, you can make your investments. So these are the opportunities available in the financial services sector after lockdown. So basically, there are 4 types of the fund-based financial services, which are very, very, very helpful for the individual investors as well as for the business investors. So there is a prospect, there is a bright future for the financial service sector you need not bother. The lockdown doesn't mean that it has affected all the sectors invariably throughout the world, but rather there are certain areas, certain sectors, particularly the financial sectors, can come out of such a crisis, can come out of such a pandemic condition very soon. Both the investors as well as the service providers will be having a bright future in the bright prospect in the future. So you need not worry. You need not hurry to pull back the investment. Stay back with the mutual funds which have more liquidity, or if you are going to invest as a fresh investors, you can select the funds with proper guidance in the mutual funds, that is equity mutual funds, SIPs, and the index funds. That will be helpful for you to get more liquid funds. So leasing, hire purchase, factoring, and the mutual funds will be having bright future in the days to come, in the years to come. We have more prosperity. So you need not worry, you need not bother. You will be getting more and more prospects. So that's what about the financial services after lockdown. Now it is the time for the participants to raise any questions. Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Kavita Madam and the faculty members of the Department of Commerce, Dr. Vidya, Dr. Leela Devi, and Ms. Padmini, and also the Madam Principal, Dr. V. Anuradha of Government of Students College, Kangayam, for having given me the wonderful opportunity to share my views on financial services after lockdown. My wholehearted thanks are wholehearted thanks are due to the participants for your patient listening. Now it is left to the participants to ask the questions. Thank you, Madam. Madam? Kavita, Madam?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Madam.
Hello. Can you
Yes,
hear
Madam.
me? Thank you
Yes.
for the wonderful presentation, sir. And
Thank you,
particularly here, I have to say your discussions on after lockdown financial services is worth mentioning here, sir. Thank you. Thank you on behalf of our department and college.
Thank you, Madam. Now it is the time for participants. If you want to ask any question, you can raise your hands so that your mic will be unmuted. Madhav Krishnan?
சொல்லுங்க.
If anybody raising hands, you can unmute them.
Yeah, okay, now. ரெட்மின்னு ஒருத்தர் பண்ணியிருக்காங்க, அவங்க கேட்கலாம், கேள்வி கேட்கலாம்.
Okay, you can unmute. Hello? Hello? Is there anybody to ask questions? யாராவது ஹேண்ட் ரைஸ் பண்ணியிருக்காங்களா?
I think no one. We can wind up the session, I think. I think there is no one. We can wind up the session.
Okay. So now let me post the, the feedback form. Yes. See, the link for feedback form is pasted in the chat box.
And we can also announce only though for those participants who are filling the feedback form, they will get the certificates.
Yes. Dear participants, the feedback form, link for feedback form is posted in the chat box. You can submit your feedback form using the link. You can get the certificates only if you submit the feedback form. So let us stay for a few minutes, madam,
Okay.
so that they can use the link for the feedback. So dear participants, உங்கள் ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸுக்காக தமிழில் சொல்லிடலாமா?
சொல்லிடலாம்.
Dear participants and students, the feedback form வந்து உங்களுக்கு chat boxல இருக்கு பாருங்க. லிங்க் வந்து chat boxல போட்டிருக்கு. நீங்கள் எல்லாரும் அதை யூஸ் பண்ணி உங்களுடைய ஃபீட்பேக் வந்து சப்மிட் பண்ணுங்க. ஃபீட்பேக் சப்மிட் பண்ணாதான் உங்களுக்கு சர்டிஃபிகேட் கிடைக்கும். ஸோ ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ் பர்டிகுலர்லி நீங்கள் யூ டோன்ட் ஃபர்கெட் டு சப்மிட் த ஃபீட்பேக். ஆல் த பார்ட்டிசிபென்ட்ஸ், please submit your feedback by using the